Boy, that 30-point win for Florida seems way in the rear view at this point. Check this out. Sam Alexis turning the ball over there, and the Vols take over in transition. I got B.J. Taylor with me. I mean, B.J., it doesn't get much better than that. Than Cade Phillips throwing down the hammer.
Not at all. You drop that one off, and the Tennessee faithful are going nuts.
It was loud. It was crazy. And ultimately, this one ends in favor of Tennessee as the Volunteers get their revenge from that 30-point loss. This one, a 20-point win instead. So it sounds like when these two teams meet, it's going to be a blowout either way. But here's your final score. Number 8, Tennessee, taking down number 5, Florida, by a score of 64-44. A lot of things going into this score as we bring you into our CBS Sports HQ studios. Haley Sutton, happy to be joined by our own B.J. Taylor. B.J., when we talked earlier, the one thing you kept hammering home was that bad taste that was left in Tennessee's mouths from that 30-point loss. They go out here, they're down 2 of their top players, and they put up a 20 win over Florida. Walk me through what you saw in that.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, Haley, we have to start with is the psychology of the team and Rick Barnes having these guys in that locker room ready to go, right? As an athlete, when you lose a game like Tennessee did the way they did in embarrassing fashion, that is a game you do not soon forget, because I promise you the film session is long. They probably watched the entire 40 minutes of everything they did wrong down in Gainesville, and that was on the mind of those players, right? We really honed in on the fact that they would be without Zakai Ziegler today and Igor Milicic, and we thought that would be a difference maker in this game. It was not. The Tennessee defense was absolutely exceptional, held Florida to 25% from the field, only 15% from the three-point line, only 5 assists. 5 assists in the entire game, Haley, for the Florida Gators, an offensive team who has been a top 20 offense in college basketball all season long. And as you see right here, looking at the numbers, again, 25%, 15% from 3. They lost the rebound differential. They lost the turnover battle by -6. Florida had its most abysmal performance offensively of the season, to say the least. But give Tennessee and Rick Barnes' group credit. They are more than capable of making a good offense look bad.
Yeah, and one of the things that we were talking about upstairs before we came on set was the fact that this Florida team failing to reach the 50-point mark, that sort of tells you a lot. We have to put a little caveat there because Walter Clayton obviously leaving the game in the first half really did make an impact for Florida. How big of a loss was that? Obviously, it was huge if they lose by 20.
Well, he's the table setter. He's the guy that feeds the other players on his team to get them going in Todd Golden's offense. Without him really being able to be at full force, see right here as he went up and just rolled that ankle. It's the worst feeling as a basketball player when you come down and your foot doesn't touch that hardwood and it hits a player's foot and just turns over. He was extremely tough in trying to gut it out, and obviously when you have an ankle injury like that, often you're able to continue to play. The question is going to be how he's doing moving forward. Haley, you know this as a former athlete. The adrenaline's still going. The swelling hasn't kicked in yet. I would be watching to see if Walter Clayton is healthy for Florida's next matchup.
Yeah, they got a number 24 Vanderbilt there. As someone who my soccer career was derailed by ankle injuries, I know exactly what you're talking about. Tomorrow is certainly not going to feel good for Walter Clayton and these Gators, but for Tennessee, they've obviously got to be feeling really good today after that win. And one of the things we keep talking about is those injuries to those key players. But there were some guys as well that stepped up in their place. Who surprised you the most today in this win?
Absolutely. It had to be Jordan Gainey, right? We know Chaz Lanier is an exceptional shooter from the outside, a plus 40% shooter from long range, a guy who has been really the offensive leader when it comes to production in the points category for the Tennessee Volunteers. But it was Jordan Gainey's 14 points in the starting lineup, right? He's been a guy who's up and down from time to time. He's not always there when they need him, but today, when they needed him more than ever, he played big, he played well, did a good job attacking the rim, getting to the hole. But once again, the Tennessee defense led the day. That's what Rick Barnes is going to ride to the success they may have moving forward throughout this season. And they're still in the middle of the pack right there in the SEC. They're still sitting, hovering around that 5 or 6 range, right? The biggest thing for Tennessee is get healthy in the month of February, and start playing your best basketball once you get to March, before you head to Bridgestone Arena for the SEC championship.
Yeah, and I just, as you were typing that, or as you were saying that, I was looking at the SEC standings, and it's bonkers numbers when you think about, like, I mean, really Auburn and Alabama, surprisingly the two football schools up there at the top. But then that middle section, even Mizzou, who Tennessee is going to have to turn around and play, Vanderbilt's in the mix as well. So let's push this series forward, and we'll start with Tennessee. Obviously, big momentum swing here for them getting that win. But I mentioned it, they got to go and play number 20 Mizzou next. How do they continue this momentum?
Well, they've got to get healthy. Number one, if you're Tennessee, Rick Barnes, you can overcome it for a game. You hear it in sports all the time. Next man up. Well, it's a reason why those guys have to be the next man up, and they are not the men that are on the front line. They've got to get healthy. They're going to need the production of Zakai Ziegler as their lead guard. They can't go without those 6 or 7 assists per game that he averages. They're going to need Milicic to continue to be the double-double machine that he is, because Tennessee's biggest woe when they lose, when they don't come out on top, is their offense. Again today, only 64 points. It didn't rear its ugly head because they held Florida to 44, but in a conference with an Alabama, who's one of the best offenses in college basketball, with an Auburn who can score the ball, Kentucky, these teams scored a high clip, and Tennessee can't rely on holding teams to under 50 points per game. They're going to have to score more. But again, if you're Rick Barnes' team, a very encouraging sign today to pick up a win without some of your key players.
Very encouraging indeed, and to your point earlier, Florida going to have to hit the reset button there. Hopefully some news with Walter Clayton positive comes out sooner rather than later. But BJ, we always enjoy having you in studio. Stick around with us though, because you got a lot more to talk about.
I'm not going nowhere
as this day goes along. So it is Tennessee getting the win. I want to call it an upset. It's not an upset because they were favored in this game, but given the rematch aspect of it, it feels a little upsetty. Either way, it's a 64-44 win, a 20-point victory, the largest top 5 win in Tennessee history. And I'm going to take this a step further. This was their 6th straight win against a top 5 opponent at home. So obviously playing at Tennessee can be challenging, even if you're ranked in that top 5.